another episode of the Dr. Paez podcast. Thank you for coming. Today, we're going to be talking about the pendulum of parenting. And the pendulum of parenting is a phenomenon that I see in my practice and in my personal life that I see a lot of parents getting stuck into. Parenting can sometimes feel like you're stuck in a pendulum swing. And I see it in my families and I see it in myself. 1 week, we're gentle parenting, validating everything. And the next, we're a drill sergeant trying to whip our kids into shape. It's exhausting. I see you doing it. I see myself doing it. In today's episode, we're breaking down this pendulum in what I call parenting the pendulum. We're going to break down the parts of the pendulum. What are the extremes that we need to stay away from? And what is the balanced center that we strive to be when parenting our children? So why do we swing? So here's the thing about parenting. We have the best intentions for our kids. We want them to thrive. We want them to do well. And sometimes we're just trying to figure things out. I'm just trying to figure things out myself. So we try one thing 1 week and we see that it doesn't work. Then we swing into the other direction, hoping something else might stick. So the way this might look for some parents, and it has looked like that in my house, is 1 week, very gentle, very validating parent. And then I see that I feel my kids are taking advantage of that. And so I swing wildly in the other direction. Very strict, very stern, almost like a drill sergeant barking orders. We think this is getting somewhere, but at the same time, I know for you and I know for me, it's very disorienting, and you can only imagine how your kids feel with this kind of parenting. At the end of the day, kids thrive on consistency. They thrive on predictability. Your kids need to know what kind of parent they're going to get when they ask you a question. They need to know what's going to happen when they get home. They need to know what kind of parenting they're going to get. If you're swinging between gentle parenting and very strict my way or the highway kind of parenting, it's very disorienting for the kid. And you're very likely to see worse behaviors than if you were to stick to what I call a balanced center with a flexible range. When you think about a pendulum, the way I like to think about a pendulum is by thinking about the swing set at the park. There's the swing, there's the fulcrum in the middle, there's a chain that comes down to the seat. These are all the patterns or all the pieces of a pendulum. The child sits in the middle, and you know how it works. You push him forward, and he goes one direction and then the other. If you stay where you are, you're going to get hit by the swing. And that's exactly what happens in parenting. If you push too much in one direction, then the kid's going to fly off and come back with the same force right back at you. If you don't swing at all, the kid stays in place, and there is no progress, and there is no fun when it comes to the swing set. So think about how you would apply this to parenting. You have to push with just enough force to make the kid go forward, get out of the way so he can come back and he can have a full swing. And then you need to know when to push again or when to just let gravity run its course and pull the child back to the center. And that is what we're trying to do with parenting, is we're trying to identify what is that center in our families and have a flexible range of swinging in both directions, right? So there might be some conditions or some situations that call for you to be more gentle and validating, and there may be some situations that call for you to be stricter and have a clear line in the sand. Our goal as parents, and your goal as a parent, is to identify a fulcrum, identify a centering point in your household. This could be something as simple as, in this house we tell the truth, or in this house we eat healthy, or whatever it is that works for your family. But you have to pick one. You have to pick what is the value of this family, and that is going to be your center. Once you pick a center, you need to be flexible. There are going to be swings in one direction and the other, and we need to be able to expect that, right? Because if we don't expect that, then we're likely or more likely to be reactive. And when we are reactive is when we tend to overcompensate in one or the other direction. Again, disorienting for you, disorienting for me, disorienting for your kid. It's not very predictable for the kid, right? So you need to be able that you pick a center, you have a flexible range, and you're predictable with that range for your kids. They will learn it eventually, but if there's no repetition, if there are no reps, let's say, it's going to be really hard for them to learn. So make sure you pick a center, flexible range, and be predictable. So what are the pitfalls of a parent stuck in a swing? All right, so there are three pitfalls that I like to point out. The first one is overcompensating. So yesterday's meltdown leads to today ice cream, despite you saying that you're not going to give them ice cream today. Or yesterday's meltdown results in having a complete overhaul of your entire parenting philosophy, which, very disorienting for the kid. The next one is having all or nothing rules. It's very hard to have all or nothing rules because life is never all or nothing. It's not black and white. You can't have all or nothing rules because there are going to be situations that call on you to be flexible, right? So you can't say no screens ever on a Monday because you know that by Thursday, they're going to be getting iPads at grandma's and they're going to be watching TV in school or at their friend's house. It's really you're going to fall flat on your face if you're having all or nothing rules because kids, one, they'll find a way around them. And two, you're just going to have to keep moving the goalpost over and over again or fall into one of these swings. All or nothing thinking, all or nothing rules is one pitfall that I see parents falling into quite a bit. And then the other one is that I mentioned earlier is parenting from guilt, right? Sometimes we ourselves can say or see when we overcompensate in one or the other direction, or maybe when we use too harsh a punishment and feel guilty. And so we try to be a little bit more lenient with the next punishment or try to gain our kids' graces again by giving into something we normally wouldn't give into. And so that's why it's important to pick a fulcrum, a center, pick a value for your family, and then identify what is this flexible range that you and your family can agree on so you don't fall into this guilt. Because once you do set a consequence, it'll be something that is predictable, the kid is expecting it, and it is flexible, and it's within this range that you have already assigned to your family. So those are three pitfalls that I'm able to identify in most of my parents, which is, overcompensating, all or nothing rules in parenting from guilt or guilty parenting. That's what I call in practice. So I've said this a number of times, but finding balance is where you're going to find your sweet spot, right? You need to be able to identify your fulcrum, pick a value that you can describe for your family. Instead of total bans or endless freedom, try for gradual bans or limits on, let's say, electronics. Let's say no electronics after 9, no electronics in the bedroom, at the dinner table. And this is more a bound step toward the change that you want to do, which is minimize electronic use. But you're not going to get home on a Monday one day and say no screens, no electronics at all. It's not going to work. Always remember that rhythm beats intensity. Just like a lot of things in life, is about consistency versus intensity, right? Make sure that when you're setting this fulcrum and you're setting this elastic range and you're having these rules or gradual rules, that you're setting a rhythm. Make sure these are rules you can live up to, that you can enforce and reinforce, and that every caretaker in your house, be it grandma, uncle, auntie, or big brother or big sister, can also implement or enforce. You don't want to set rules that only you can enforce. You don't want to set rules that only dad can enforce. You don't want to set rules that only mom can enforce. You don't want to set rules that only grandma or grandpa can enforce, and so on and so forth. And so one of the biggest things is that you need to set these rules so everybody that takes care of your child can take over at any moment, and everybody knows the values of the house, what is the flexible range, what are these rules, okay? And then the last thing that is important for you to know is that you're going to make mistakes. And the thing that makes good parenting isn't perfection, it's repair. And kids need to see the repair. They can't just see the perfection. That's going to be undue pressure on the kid to be perfect. It's a really good thing for you to let kids into the repair process. Maybe you spoke to them in a tone that was nasty and you feel bad about it. You're allowed to feel bad about it without apologizing for why you yelled at them. So you say, I don't like the way I spoke to you. I don't like the way that I yelled at you. I feel the same way about that. You shouldn't have done that. I just don't like the tone that I used, or that I raised my voice, and that I scared you. And so it's okay to apologize and to repair for the way you do things. And at the same time, remind them there was a reason why this happened, and it was because they did something that they weren't supposed to do. And so make sure if you make mistakes, you own it, reset, and you go back to the fulcrum with a flexible range. Guys, the biggest takeaway that I want you to take from this episode is that parenting the pendulum isn't about perfection. It's about repair, like I said before. The pendulum is going to swing. It's your job just to pick a center in a flexible range, and you will make mistakes. Kids learn from the repair. Kids learn from the recovery more than they learn from the mistake itself. Make sure you're always repairing and going back to center. Attempt something new, repair, go back to center, and show your kids what that process looks like, because at the end of the day, that is the process of living, that is the process of life, and as parents, that is our job, to prepare our kids for life. And in life, you make mistakes, you have to repair, come back to center, start again, pick up where you left off. And so by doing this in your parenting, essentially you're modeling the behavior you want your kids to have as adults, as adolescents, because this is resilience. That is the definition of resilience, being able to pick yourself back up and start again, or pick up where you left off. It starts with modeling in the parenting approach. Don't put pressure on yourself to be perfect. If you do put pressure on yourself, put pressure on yourself to repair. Parenting the pendulum isn't easy, but it's doable, and you will make mistakes. If you think things are going smooth and then there's a setback, you haven't lost all progress. That's part of the parenting process. So if this resonates with you, share your pendulum story down in the comments. And remember that we're doing this together. If you found this useful, come with me on this journey. Subscribe to the channel as we unpack this thing called parenting to make it more digestible and make it something that we can all do together, myself included.